Today I'm starting my new series on which foods to have in the home and the quantities needed in order to have long-term storage. Welcome to Urban Prepping with Pam. I'm Pam. Welcome to my channel, and I'm glad you're here for part one of a series that I'm going to be doing. If you're not a subscriber already, I would really encourage you to go ahead and hit the subscribe button so that you can follow along with the series. I know how YouTube is. You get sort of, if you're like me, get lost sometimes watching videos, and so I feel that this series is so important. I really don't want you to miss any of it. So go ahead and hit subscribe and that notification bell so that it will remind you every time I put up a new video. I may be recording several videos today, so if I'm not changing my shirt, that's why. I'm going to go ahead and try to record as many of these as I can before my husband comes home, because once he's home, it's all over. I think you know how that is. So today, part one, just a little bit of background. And I've mentioned this before in some of my other videos, so I'm not going to hang on it for too long. But I just want to reiterate that when the lockdown started in March of 2020, my husband and I, who have been preppers for a long time, really had to do a serious assessment, because we realized that even though we thought we were prepared, we finally realized we were not prepared. There were shortages that we weren't anticipating. There were lockdowns which we were not anticipating. It was a very real possibility to us, in our minds anyway, that, if things got really bad, our children and their families might come back or need help. And so we really realized that we needed to get serious. And so that started me on a journey, and it really has changed our lives in a lot of ways. But the bottom line is I do have a list of items that homes should have in case of an emergency. Now, in my house, it's just me and my husband. So the numbers I'm going to give you, I'll give you numbers as to how much is needed for 2 people. So if you have 4 people in your home, you're going to have to multiply these numbers by 2. Also, have a notebook handy or some paper, because I'm going to be giving you numbers, and I really want you to write this down, because you won't remember. I don't remember. I refer back to my book all the time. So if you have a notebook, that's wonderful. If you have one handy, please go get it. If you don't have one handy, get some paper, even if it's out of your computer. Write these things down. Have 1 page per category. So today's category is going to be grains, and a lot of the information that I got off of LDS websites and videos. I just did a lot of research, and it wasn't only LDS. I went to other preppers and studied. I've got books. I mean, I've been doing a lot of reading, and I've combined all that information. Now, what I'm going to give you is kind of, generally speaking, is accepted as what families should have in their house for long-term storage. My goal and my husband's goal has always been to have a 1-year supply. Now, the way I used to do it is because I've always done a lot of canning and a lot of dehydrating of food. I used to look at what I had and say, is that enough for a year? Yeah, I think so. And so there was nothing really scientific, nothing was written down. But actually, when I started writing things down, I realized how badly I needed to really keep track of these things, and that I didn't have as much as I thought that I did. So writing things down helps a lot. Now, today is going to be grains. The recommended amount of grains, now let me see here. Okay, per person. So I'm going to multiply that by 2 for my household. But per person, you should have a total of 300 pounds of grain. So for me and my husband, I had to have 600 pounds of grain. Well, I do canning, but I didn't really have much grain at all. And so I have broken it down as to recommended amounts. They recommend, and this is what really prompted me to get my own grain mill and start grinding my own grains. But they recommend for a family of 2, now remember, multiply this if your family is larger, but for 2 people, they're recommending that the household have 300 pounds of grain, 300 pounds of wheat. Now, in the beginning when I was reading this, I'm like, what do I need wheat for? Well, you make flour out of wheat. You can actually even plant the wheat and grow more if you can plant wheat in the area where you grow in the summertime. So I did not have any wheat at all. I had some flour, but not a whole lot. So I started buying flour. Now, in addition to the 300 pounds of wheat, they're recommending for a family of 2 have 50 pounds of flour in addition to the wheat. In fact, you know what? It might be easier if I give you all the numbers. You can write them down, then we'll go back and talk about it. So here's the goal. The goal for a family of 2, 300 pounds of wheat, 50 pounds of flour, 50 pounds of cornmeal, 50 pounds of oats, 100 pounds of rice, and 50 pounds of pasta. That equals 600 pounds. Now the LDS recommends 800 pounds. So I guess what I have put aside for our family is, I guess, the minimum. But I probably do come close to meeting the LDS goal because I have small amounts of different kinds of grains that I like to experiment with, and if I added all of that up, maybe it would come close to that. But I mean, it wasn't intentional, and I don't have it written in my book. Those are just things that I like to play around with. But now I'm going to back up. Okay, so that's 600 pounds. So per person, if you've got 5 or 12 people and it's hard for you to multiply, I'll give you the per person numbers. So per person, you should have 150 pounds of wheat, 25 pounds of flour, 25 pounds of cornmeal, 25 pounds of oats, 50 pounds of rice, and 25 pounds of pasta per person in your household. Now, you may be wondering, what am I going to do with all of that wheat? And that's exactly what I was saying to myself. So in the beginning, I just started buying a bunch of flour because I said to myself, I'm never going to do anything with wheat. And I started buying, flour. But the problem was at that time, and maybe still, I'm not sure. A couple months ago, I went to buy some flour, and they're only allowing 1 bag. So it was difficult because we would go to Costco and I'd get a bag of flour, and then my husband, he would go in a separate line and he'd get a bag of flour. And but still, that's all we could do. A bag is 12 pounds, I think, at Costco. And so it took a while. Now, we also purchased a lot of 5-gallon buckets, food grade buckets. And if you're going to do long-term storage, you're going to need those buckets. But they're cheap. You can buy them at Menards, at Home Depot. Make sure that they're the white buckets, because those dyed buckets are not food safe. But also make sure that it says food grade or food safe on the side of the bucket. And you're going to need a lot of them, because we kept going back and buying more and more and more. So We kept them, I think whoever the people at Menards are, we kept them ordering for quite a while. And also we purchased Mylar bags that fit in 5-gallon buckets. At the beginning in March, those were easy to find. We ordered them on Amazon, no problem, and then they ran out, and they're still, last time I looked, they were still out of them. Now, I was able finally to get a really nice package of the Mylar bags that fit 5-gallon buckets from Azure Standard. And the quality of those bags are really good. So if you're an Azure customer, take a look on their website. And there is a link below. If you're not an Azure customer, there's a link below this video. If you click that link, it'll take you to their site. You can check to see if you live along one of their routes. If you do, there may be a drop-off point somewhere in your area, so you can check that out. But they, just this last month, I just picked them up on Monday. They had them in stock finally because they were out for a few months also. So I'm happy to have more of those bags, because for long-term storage, what I do is a 5-gallon bucket will hold 25 pounds. So that kind of gives you an idea of how many buckets you're going to need to store this stuff. 25 pounds will fit in a 5-gallon bucket. So I take the Mylar bag, I put it in the bucket, I pour the grains in the Mylar bag, and then for a 5-gallon, you're going to need a 2,000 cc oxygen absorber. I put that in with it and then seal the Mylar bag, and then put the top on top of the bucket. So you don't want to just put the grain in the bucket and then put an oxygen absorber in there, because eventually it's going to cause the bucket to collapse. It'll suck all the air out, and also those buckets I think are permeable, and so it's not a great way to store your grains long term anyway. Mylar bags really are the best way to go. Now, when it comes to grain and you're thinking, oh, you know, weevils and bugs and all that kind of stuff, some people say take your grains and put them in your freezer for a few days, I think, and then take it out and then make sure that they dry correctly before you store them to kill the eggs. That's actually not enough, because what that does is that recreates hibernation actually with bugs. And so if there are eggs in there and you freeze it and thaw it, it's going to think that winter's over and now I can hatch. So actually, if you're going to freeze your grains, you're going to have to do it twice in order to actually kill the bugs. I don't do that because I buy lots of 25-pound bags. I don't have room like that in my freezer. I just don't. But the second reason I don't do that is, you know, there's condensation on things that you put in your freezer. So you're not going to want to put your grains in there and then they get damp. And if you haven't made sure that they dry well enough before you store them, you know, how do you know that bugs aren't going to get back in there? The thing with storing your food in the Mylar bags with an oxygen absorber is this. If you put your grains, you put the Mylar bag in the bucket, you pour your grain in the Mylar bag, you put in a 2,000 cc oxygen absorber and seal the bag. That takes all the air out of the bag. Bugs can't live with no air. So there's no need to be freezing and worrying about that. If you've got the oxygen absorber and the Mylar bag, you should be safe from bugs. I have not seen any bugs or had any issue with bugs, and actually I keep 5-gallon buckets in my pantry, and I do put bay leaves in with my grain. I'll put a few bay leaves in the bottom of the bucket. I pour my grain in about halfway up. I'll put some more bay leaves, put the rest of the grain in, and then bay leaves on top. Bugs don't like bay leaves, and so that, you know, I do it. I have not had any problems with bugs. I don't know if it's the bay leaves or we just have had grain that didn't have them. I don't know. But I do use the bay leaves because I've been doing that for years, and I do believe that it works. So maybe you'll find that helpful. For me and my husband, 300 pounds of wheat's a lot of wheat. But what this made me look at, in the beginning I thought, well, there's no way I'm going to buy wheat. You know, I'm just going to buy flour. But what happened was I found out that flour it's been ground already. So it's not going to keep for really long term. It's not going to keep. It goes bad. It has like an expiration date on it. Whereas wheat, if you're storing the whole wheat, they have found wheat grains in pyramids in Egypt, and 3,000 years later planted them and they grew. So as long as the wheat has not been ground, it will keep indefinitely, for a long time. So, okay, so then I understood why not to have a whole bunch of flour on hand, to have the wheat on hand, but I didn't really want to get into grinding my own grains. Now, I have another video called Why I Grind My Own Grains. It was a real discovery time for me, but and I explain all of that there, so I'm not going to go into that here. Bottom line is, I do grind my own wheat and make my own flour now. It is much healthier. I have dealt with weight issues all my life, and had cancer, and so I've just reached a place in my life where I want to get rid of I'm trying to eat organic. I'm trying to eat whole foods, not processed foods. And so that just seemed for me to be the logical thing, was to go ahead and buy the wheat, grind the wheat as I need it, and bake with that. It is loaded with all kinds of vitamins and minerals that are not in flour, and much healthier for you. And it's a whole grain. You get all the goodness from the whole grain instead of having all the goodness, and when you buy flour, it's all taken out. So for me, I decided I'm going to go ahead and we're going to start living a different lifestyle. And so I have pretty much gotten rid of all processed foods out of my kitchen, which I'm very happy about. It took me 65 years to do it. If you're younger than me, go for it, man, because it's going to be a lot healthier. Now, will I lose weight? I don't know. That only time will tell on that. But I'm trying. I'm trying very much. So what I did do, I have an electric grinder, but you have to think along the terms of, in emergency, if the lights go out, what am I going to do if I got all this wheat and no way to grind it? Well, I did buy a hand crank grinder. Now, don't go too cheap. They have them out there for like $25. If you read the comments on those on Amazon, people are really sorry that they went that route. The grinder that I want, the hand grinder I want, is made by Wondermill. It's the Wondermill Junior, and it's but they've been out of stock for many, many months. 6 months or more. You just can't get them. And I think because a lot of people are thinking along the same lines as we are. We need to get prepared for an emergency, and I think there was a run on all this stuff. So in the meantime, what I did do, I spent it was about $100. So it's just, it's a step up from the cheapest, okay? I got I think it's called a Victoria hand grinder. It's still in the box. I've never used it. I probably never will use it, because I think when the Wondermill Junior does come back into stock, I'm going to go ahead and buy that. And then I will donate my maybe I could do a giveaway or something like that. I'll be getting rid of the Victoria because I really want the Wondermill Junior. I like the Wondermill. I have a Wondermill. I have a Wonder Mix. And I just love the Wondermill products. I don't get any credit or anything like that for saying that. I just think they're fantastic. So when I get my Junior, I will replace the Victoria with that. So now I've got for my husband and me, we do have 300 pounds of wheat, and I have the ability to grind it whether we have electricity or not. Flour. Well, I gave some flour away. My daughter has a bread machine, and so I gave her a 5-gallon bucket of flour. And but I have kept some. I mean, you just never know. I'll keep it for a while until I feel. Now it's in a Mylar bag. It's sealed with an oxygen absorber, so it's going to keep longer than if it were exposed to air. But it's not going to keep forever. But I'm just going to keep it downstairs for now, and maybe when my daughter runs out of her 5-gallon bucket of flour, I'll give that to her. But it's not a bad idea to have flour on hand. And according to what I read, you should have, per person, 150 pounds of wheat plus 25 pounds of flour. So it's nice to have some flour on hand. Just realize it's not going to keep forever. Cornmeal. So I do have, for my husband and I, it's 50 pounds. I do have 50 pounds of cornmeal that I have purchased. But in my cornmeal journey, I found out that they're doing the same thing to cornmeal as they're doing with flour, which is taking out the germ and you know, selling that as feed. And so really, when you buy cornmeal already made, it's really deficient in vitamins. It's not a good thing to eat. And I did buy some cornmeal from Azure. When I compared that to the cornmeal I've always bought before, there's a huge difference. The Azure Standard cornmeal is the whole grain, so they haven't gotten rid of the germ. They haven't gotten rid of the bran of the corn, so all the pieces are there. But the only issue with it is that it has already been ground, and any seed, which is a grain, any grain that's been ground already, it deteriorates quickly because of oxidation. So I do have some. I'm going to go through it because I do make cornbread on a regular basis. So I'm going to go through what I have from, but in the meantime, I bought whole corn, dried whole corn. And I have a bucket of that, and I can just put that through my grain mill and mill my own cornmeal. So we are good to go there. But, you know, what they recommend is that you have 25 pounds per person of cornmeal. They also recommend 25 pounds per person of oats. Now, how you eat your oats is up to you. Some people like oatmeal. Some people like steel-cut oats. I had, at the beginning of this, I had bought oatmeal, but I've discovered oat groats, which is basically steel-cut oats that haven't been cut. It's the whole oat. It's just the hull has been taken. Oats have a very tough hull, and hulls are not edible. So the hull's been taken off, but it's the whole grain. And my husband and I eat oat groats every day now. I make a big batch in my Instapot, and it lasts us 3 or 4 days. And then I make another batch and just keep it in the refrigerator. And we love them. They're very healthy. My Wonder Mix, I also have the ability now to put the whole oats in my Wonder Mix attachment, and it will actually make oatmeal. It'll flatten the oat and rolled oats. So it'll roll the oats for me. And so we have plenty of oat groats. Plus I have oatmeal, so I have really more than I need. And we'll just, over time, we'll go through some of our excess of what we have. So you're going to want 25 pounds of oats per person for your family, and whatever kind of oats that is. And that would be for cereal, but you know, oats are good for other things. You can, if you're making a meatloaf, sometimes I don't really buy breadcrumbs, and so a lot of times I will hold my meatloaf together with oatmeal. Use them as breadcrumbs, so that'll work. Now, rice. Per person, you should have 50 pounds of rice. Do you eat rice at home? That's an important question. Because until I married my husband, who's Puerto Rican, I never made rice. Very rarely would my mother ever make rice. So I didn't grow up on rice. It was not a part of my life. The few times that I made an attempt to make rice, it was horrible. I didn't know what I was doing. My husband actually showed me how to make a proper pan of rice. And he has to have his rice. I mean, he really likes his rice. His favorite meal is rice and eggs. I know, kind of weird, but actually, unless you've had it, it is actually really good. So we are talking here, if you're talking long-term storage, white rice. Because brown rice has got the oils in it. It's wonderful if you want to have it in your kitchen for for constant use, that's wonderful. But your long-term storage rice should be white rice, because brown rice, just like the flour, doesn't keep forever. It goes rancid. And so keep it in your kitchen for regular use, but for long-term storage, you're going to want to store away white rice. And if rice is not a part of your everyday life, and I said this a long time ago, and I actually took a couple months break because I've been going through a lot of things personally. So I took a little break and I'm back, but I'm going to make a video on how to make proper rice, because if you know how to make it right, you're going to love it. And it can be a part of your household. And it's wonderful to be able to make rice and to be able to enjoy it. If you're going to store rice, and also I'm going to put beans in this category, although we haven't gotten to that yet. But if you're going to put those in long-term storage, you want to make sure you know how to cook them. And so I'm going to do a video on cooking rice, and I'll do a video on cooking beans. I like to make my beans in my Instapot, but you better know how, I guess, to make beans without an Instapot in case you find yourself without electricity for some reason. So anyway, that's 50 pounds of rice per person. And then pasta. Pasta's wonderful because it's already dried. It's like, it isn't, it's basically like it's dehydrated because it's dried. And so what I've done is I went to Costco. I like that Costco has organic pasta. And it comes there's 6 or 8 packages. With Costco, you have to buy everything in bulk. So I think there were 6 or 8 one-pound packages in this pack of pasta that they had. And we've got a whole bunch of those put aside. So I think it's 6 or 8 pounds per pack. And now for my husband and myself, that's 50 pounds that we need of pasta. I could barely made it to 50. I think I'm at 48 pounds, and I'm just going to leave that. We are not really pasta eaters. I don't make it that often. I don't know why. We just don't. And so I have it in storage, but I don't really buy it for use here in the home. Oh, I did just buy a pasta maker. So maybe fresh, I like it better. I just don't love pasta. I don't like how it tastes, but maybe if I make it fresh, I'll like it better. So anyway, I do have for myself and my husband 50 pounds of pasta, or 48 pounds, I think, of pasta put aside. So that is what you need as far as grains. That's our first category, is grains. And I'll go over that again. Per person in your household, you're going to want 150 pounds of wheat, 25 pounds of flour, 25 pounds of cornmeal, 25 pounds of oats, 50 pounds of rice, and 25 pounds of pasta. That's 300 pounds of grains per person in your family. Now, that's what they recommend, and actually that's what we have. You may need to make adjustments for your family, and that's okay. Go ahead and make your adjustments. I don't know what those adjustments could be because this is pretty straightforward. I mean, there aren't really a lot of options when it comes. But, for instance, let's say that you like barley and you would like to have some barley instead of wheat. Go ahead. You can make bread out of barley. So if you've got some other grain that you prefer to use, go to it. I mean, that's wonderful. So again, I hope you found that helpful. So I'll see you for the next video. Bye-bye.